Hey, it's John with Alpine Motors and Jake. We were working on the old Ford Bronco, took it for a drive, and we started smelling fuel. So we started looking at the carburetor, and we realized fuel was coming out of this little pin right here, which is one of the butterflies for the engine. And typically, when that happens, it's because something is wrong with the fuel system. And the way these carburetors work, this is where the fuel bowl is. So the fuel fills up this little bowl, and if you imagine like a cup, it's filling it up, and inside there is a float. And as that float floats up, there's a needle in here that stops the fuel from going into the carburetor. If that is sticking, if there's dirt or if it's dirty or something's wrong, that fuel will actually go past that, fill this bowl all the way up, and it spills over into the carburetor. Well, it spills over so much that it bleeds out through these little butterfly linkages right here. So we have a feeling either the fuel pressure is too high and the fuel comes in here, it goes to this bowl, goes through a tube here on the other side, and then goes into this bowl. So either the fuel pressure is too high or something is wrong with the needle in this side of the carburetor. So because this one is not leaking, I'm going to assume that something's wrong with the needle. And on these carburetors, it's just this piece right here. So we're going to get a screwdriver. We've already got it, air cleaner off. We're going to take that off of there. And what this will do is when the car is idling, it will basically flood the motor and it will put too much fuel into the motor. It'll stall it out. It'll act like it's running out of fuel, but it actually has too much fuel. And you'll also see it dripping out of those shafts right there. So we're going to take this out. We're going to go look at it at the workbench. And you have to be very careful because there's a little O-ring right there. So you want to make sure that little O-ring doesn't break. And then we're going to take this over to the workbench and see what we got. All right, so we're going to use a jeweler's loupe. And we're going to take a look inside of here and see what we see. If there's any debris or anything inside here, and there is. So what I'm finding is little pieces of wire inside of here, and actually one just fell out. So this little tiny piece of wire right here, there's several of them inside of here. And I'll show you guys what it looks like through the jeweler's loupe. So I just put the jeweler's loupe over the front of the camera so you can see. But if you look in there, right at the tip of that, right there, you can see that wire right on the top right there. And I also noticed some inside the top here. So the way this works, it's basically a cone shape and then another cone that goes into it receiving. And when the fuel float pushes up, it creates pressure and it stops the fuel from flowing into the bowl. That restriction or that little piece of wire is causing that needle to not completely seat. So fuel's continuing to seat past it. And then it's overfilling the fuel bowl and it's causing the carburetor to stall out the motor. So we're going to take those pieces out of there and we're actually going to clean this up and it should solve our problem. We're also going to put a tiny bit of oil on this O-ring right here just to protect it when we put it back in so we don't tear it. But all the gaskets in the O-ring look really good. It's just that there's that little bit of metal, I guess, wire shavings in there. I don't know why they're there, but we'll get them out and get it cleaned up. Getting in here. All right, so I would grab the dirtiest pick I've got. I'm just going to get in here and try and get those pieces out of here. There's a whole bunch of them in here. So there's one right there. All right, and then there are more in here. So I'm just going to keep getting them out. Oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of them. They're little pieces of electrical wire. Here it is. I don't know if you guys can see that, but these are all the little wires that were inside the needle.
Mm-hmm. Put it back on the black. Yeah.
So that was causing the motor to essentially get too much fuel and die out when I was driving it. So it was really getting a lot of fuel because it was just blowing right past this thing. There's another one on here. It's amazing how something like that can cause all kinds of problems. All right. Okay, so we're going to take some Carb and choke cleaner. Hang on. All right, so we're just cleaning it out really good. Then we're going to take our compressed air. We're going to just clean that out. And then we're gonna look at it one more time and make sure it's good, but that should do it. So we're gonna put a little bit of lube on this and then put it back in the truck. All right, so like I said, fuel comes in the top, goes through this opening here, down this little tube. As the float comes up, it pushes up on this, and that little rubber seat right there closes off and causes any more fuel from getting through here. If you have too much fuel pressure, sometimes that'll push this down and fuel will leak past, but most of the time it's like gunk or something inside of here that's causing the problem, and that was what we found. So let's lube it up and put it back together. All right, with everything cleaned up, we verified there's no other pieces here in the orifice. There could be in the float bowl, but we can't take this apart right here. We need to move some cars around. So we're just going to see if this solves our problem for right now. So we put a tiny bit of lubrication on the jet. We're just going to run it in. Okay, we'll put our air cleaner back on. We'll fire it off and see if it still leaks fuel. It shouldn't, at least not right away. All right, seems to be running nice and smooth. I think that did the trick. We're gonna pull the front needle and seat out just to double check it, but I don't see any fuel coming out of the butterflies, and I think we've solved it. So if you ever have a problem where fuel is spilling out through the side of the carburetor, or the engine's dying because it's getting too much fuel, first thing you should do is check your fuel pressure or your needle and seat. Because fuel pressure is a little harder, you need a fuel pressure gauge. You can get away with just pulling the needle and seat, take a look at them, see if they're clean. Watch that little rubber O-ring I was showing, because fuel can get around it if it's worn out. But very simple fix. Carburetors are pretty straightforward. They work or they don't. If they're set up right, usually they'll tell you what's going on. In this case, it was a fuel float issue, which is what we thought it was. So there you go. We hope you enjoyed this. We'll bring you more content as we work on old cars, but that was a relatively simple fix to get you off the side of the road and get you home. All right, see you guys next time.